My name is Caroline, and I'm 49 years old. I have been married to my husband, Carter, for 20 years now, and last year, when our son left home to go to college outside of the prefecture, I had more free time to spend. However, I still have to send him money for his expenses, so I decided to start working part-time. Since I've been a housewife since our son was born, I initially struggled with many aspects of the job. But lately, I've been feeling a sense of accomplishment as my opinions are being valued at work. Hey Carter, they said they might raise my hourly wage a bit. It feels good to be recognized for my hard work, I said with enthusiasm as I talked to Carter, who was watching TV absent-mindedly. And then, he suddenly asked, "So, does that mean you can live on your own now?" Suddenly, my husband asked something completely nonsensical. Huh? I responded, thinking it might be a misunderstanding due to his casual tone. He turned towards me and continued speaking, "It's perfect timing. I've been meaning to tell you." My husband's smirk gave me an uneasy feeling. "I've got myself a lovely girlfriend. You're no longer needed." His unexpected words left me stunned. "Get the divorce and marriage certificates from the city office tomorrow." He said it without a care in the world. It was so abrupt that I couldn't make sense of it. What do you mean?" I asked. He wanted a divorce because he had a girlfriend. He planned to remarry with new girlfriend. As the situation became clearer, I felt my body trembling. My husband chuckled at my reaction. "I can still live as a man, unlike you who's been avoiding me for ages. Besides, our physical relationship has been non-existent for a long time, so there's no point in being together anymore." His disrespectful remarks were infuriating. It's true that we haven't had a husband-wife relationship for a long time, but that doesn't mean I've given up on being a woman. In fact, I'd rather not be reminded of my 50-year-old, out-of-shape husband and his male desires. I felt a surge of anger and, inexplicably, burst into laughter. "You're tired, busy, and a hassle. All you ever say are those things, and you've been avoiding me. Wanting to live as a man now is just a joke." Suddenly, my husband's expression turned stern. "What's so funny? Don't mess around, old lady." He used rough and offensive language. Then he crossed his arms, slumped down, and said, "Off. You're so different from Ayla. She's head over heels in love with me. She's bragging that I'm the best boyfriend she's ever had. What about you, on the other hand? Erase. You're so happy about such a little thing, aren't you?" Carter seemed eager to boast about his mistress, Ayla, and looked down on me. "Gayla. That's her name. Ayla. She's not a snail." And then, Carter went on to proudly describe Ayla's background. "She's in her mid-20s, more than a decade younger than him. And she's pregnant with his child. Nowadays, age difference marriages are not uncommon, but for a parent with an almost 20-year-old son to have a child with a woman who is not much older than his child, I felt like going crazy with disgust. "In life, you need love," he said. "Rather than being frozen and covered in mold like you need love that's as fresh as freshly made dough, just like Ayla's smooth and radiant skin. Otherwise, it's not worth spending money on." My husband, Carter, was talking rapidly with a rolled tongue. "Oh, so it's basically affection bought with money, huh? Ignoring his own aging, he's choosing a young and fresh girl. I see. You switched to a girl with no morals who's fine with cheating on a married man for money," I pointed out. When I pointed this out, my husband said, "It's not about money. I'm telling you it's about love." He spat at me and got angry. "Anyway, I'm serious. I need to marry Ayla as soon as possible to put my mind at ease. You should pack your bags and leave." Well, he certainly listed everything in his favor. I was speechless with astonishment. At the same time, I found it somewhat ridiculous. After all, how long had it been since this man used the word love with me? I'm sure that girl, Ayla, will stop showing any reaction after a while. Over time, along with aging, such fleeting emotions would surely fade away. Rather than that, the terrible words my husband is throwing at me now will be directed at a woman named Ayla next. Really, you're quite pathetic. I should have realized it before we got married. Come to think of it, I've been handling all the household chores and childcare by myself. Instead of lending a helping hand, my husband began to criticize me constantly, saying I haven't done this or that. Even though it was the era when such remarks were considered normal, there wasn't a single word of love or appreciation. And now, he's using me up, tossing me aside, and switching to a younger woman. I could hardly believe it was insane. But Carter seemed to take my words as a sore loser and said, "Well, then, there is no problem between us. Anyway, I'll fill out the form on my next day off. Just make sure you have both of them ready." He left me alone and went back to his room. For the next few days, I had sleepless nights, and my tears of regret wouldn't stop. Still, outwardly, I pretended to remain unfazed. On the next holiday, my husband had invited his affair partner to our house. "Hello there, Carter's old wife. I've come to help with the paper war." Sitting on the sofa with a humming tune, the woman named Ayla crossed her legs high. She had soft skin and confident appearance, clearly felt good about herself. Given her profession, her makeup was flashy, and her clothes were excessively revealing, with the design exposing her cleavage. Her tight skirt was so many that even I, as a woman, felt unsure where to look. But I felt that she didn't really love my husband. My intuition told me that her purpose was surely. I had already prepared myself for divorce, so I faced her. I didn't intend to resist, but her words and actions bothered me. "So, your name is Ayla, right? Did you start dating Carter knowing he's a married man? Calling me Carter's old wife means you both understand each other's positions, right?" She laughed and said, "I'm not dumb, you know. Don't underestimate me, old lady. You're the one who's about to be discarded. I'm going to be Carter's wife from now on. It's an easy deal, isn't it?" "I see. I'm glad you answered so clearly. I even recorded this conversation. So, you know that I can also claim alimony from you, right?" I showed them the recorder I was using to tape this conversation. She sighed with annoyance and complained to my husband, "Carter, I thought you said your wife wouldn't interfere. This isn't what we agreed on." My husband tried to calm her down, saying, "Don't worry. I've thought about it, right, Ayla? No need to get so angry." Carter, Ayla. Their conversation was truly cringeworthy. As I frowned, my husband brought out some documents. "Write the divorce papers with these conditions." The document listed conditions for divorce, including alimony and pension division. "What? You're giving this old lady $30 million. That'll reduce my share, won't it?" Without me having to investigate further, she candidly exposed her farts. "It'll reduce," she repeated. I was sure of it. Her goal was my husband's inheritance, which he was currently in the process of inheriting from his real father. Well, Ayla, this includes our son's child support, you know." In his eyes, his wife's blatant reluctance even seemed cute as he tried to soothe her. "It's like a severance payment, huh? Expensive, isn't it?" I struggled to contain my peak of anger. Nevertheless, I was convinced that my intuition was right and added, "If the terms of the divorce can be documented in a notarized agreement, then this is fine. Also, I would like the payment to be made in one lump sum." I kept my response to the minimum, and Carter, aware that the conversation was being recorded, agreed to the terms. "Are you satisfied now?" During the exchange with my husband, that woman, who had been looking bored, urged us to finish filling out the divorce papers. "Old lady, you have to move out of here by the end of the month, okay? I'm going to cancel the lease at the place I'm living now. I'll leave once the notarized agreement is ready and the divorce papers are filed," I replied. Upon hearing this, the woman, who seemed ready to move in immediately, grumbled with dissatisfaction and reluctantly left. Eventually, the notarized agreement was finalized, and Carter and I were divorced. Then, as if she had been waiting, that woman came to kick me out. "Come on, hurry up, don't dawdle, get out," she said with glee. "He, ha, the cheerful woman continued. "I just filed the marriage certificate. Now I'm Carter's wife. This fabulous house is mine." I reluctantly handed her the keys to the front door as she was jumping with joy. At that time, I was curious, so I asked, "Isn't Carter about the same age as your parents? If you call me an old lady, then Carter, who is older than me, is an old man. Why did you choose such a person as your marriage partner?" Her blunt answer matched my expectations perfectly. "Carter is a division manager at a top tire company. This house is a recently renovated property near a station. It's a pretty stylish single-family home. I'll replace the furniture to my liking. She was daydreaming. Carter treats me like a princess. He's not handsome and a bit old, but he says he'll buy me anything I want. She mocked me, looking triumphant as if to say her future was secured. Hope everything goes as you wish. With a sigh, I left the house I had lived in for many years. I moved to a dormitory of a certain university. I was hired as a live-in dorm mother, which is very rare nowadays. Actually, I had been working part-time at a company cafeteria. When I explained to my employer that I wanted to make a fresh start after leaving Carter and start on my own in a different place, my boss, who appreciated my usual work ethic, contacted the head office. The dormitory position had just become available due to an employee's retirement, and I gratefully accepted it. I was really glad I had gotten my nutritionist certification. The rent and utilities were super cheap. Although I didn't have much free time to go out, it was a comfortable and enjoyable workplace. About 3 months into this new life, I received a call from my ex-husband. "Mom's in trouble. Can you help with her care?" he asked. Which nerve to say such a thing. "We're strangers now. It's your wife's job to take care of her," I pointed out, stating the obvious. He responded, "Ayla is pregnant. Mom seems to have dementia and throws things, so it's dangerous. So, it's okay for her to throw things at me." What a logic. Absolutely not. Don't call me anymore. We're done. I firmly rejected him. I had been in touch with my mother-in-law for 20 years since my marriage, but we never had a close relationship. And now, just starting to live independently, I couldn't afford to care for someone else. But Carter somehow found out where I was and came to see me with that woman. "It's hopeless. If you can't provide care, then return the alimony you were paid," he said, making an absurd demand. "I don't think I have any obligation to comply with such a request," I replied coldly, pushing him away, only to be met with a fierce glare from that woman. "Old lady, you knew and tricked us. We were counting on an inheritance that turned out to be non-existent, and instead, we found a mountain of debt," she yelled, scattering papers everywhere. "Tricking you? That's a terrible thing to say. You just assumed Carter had wealth." I sighed deliberately. Indeed, when I was handling the inheritance procedures for my late father-in-law, I discovered he had a significant amount of debt. If that was all, just renouncing the inheritance would have been enough. However, Carter had cancelled his father's cell phone plan and sold off household items and jewelry for cash before the procedures. There's a law that if you handle any property before the inheritance renunciation procedures, you can't renounce it, and that's exactly what happened. As a result, the debt fell squarely on Carter and that woman. I triumphantly said, "Carter dumped the tedious inheritance procedures on me and didn't bother to ask anything about them. That's because, Ayla, he needed money to continue his affair with you and touched the estate for that very reason. That's something you should have clearly stated." Carter protested, "But that's exactly my line. You didn't ask when you should have. Now both of you have to take responsibility." "What? I didn't know about this. I wasn't told." She panicked, her face pale. "So, you plan to just take the money and run, huh?" "They approached me aggressively, but that's not my problem." "You make such a silly point. If you hadn't cheated on me, you wouldn't have had to make money for your mistress, and you could have disinherited it. You definitely caused this situation." "Gah." He groaned and stepped back. "You knew he was married, Ayla, and still pursued a relationship for his assets, even going as far as to have a child and kick me out. You desired this situation and put yourself here." I lectured her, almost old enough to be her mother. If I knew it would come to this, I wouldn't want such an old man. But I still had something to say. "Do you remember the notarized agreement from our divorce? I received alimony, pension division, and child support from Carter. But I can also demand alimony from you." "What? You're saying $30,000 isn't enough? That's just greedy." She screamed in disbelief and hurled insults at me. "Well, I was going to forget about it if you guys would just leave me alone now that I'm no longer relevant. But you keep coming up with nonsensical theories, demanding that I take care of your mother, or return the alimony that you paid, and all sorts of other unreasonable things. I've lost my patience with you." When I revealed that I had recorded our divorce terms discussion and was serious about demanding alimony, she ran away without looking back. While watching her leave, I turned back to Carter, who was still standing there in shock. I wonder if someone in the late stages of pregnancy can run like that. Is she really pregnant? And where's the love after she just ran off? At my question, Carter gasped. I was wrong. Please come back, he begged tearfully, suddenly looking much older. Not a chance. Please leave. Kaoroli Inye. He cried out pitifully, but after everything he had done, I felt no sympathy. As I expected, that woman left the divorce papers and disappeared, apparently lying about the pregnancy. Carter now shoulders the debt and the care of his mother alone, worn down by stress and overwork. I find that taking care of children around the same age as my son as a dorm mother suits me well, and lately I've been getting compliments about looking younger. I plan to continue living honestly, without arrogance or foolish parts. Everyone, be careful when it comes to divorce.